This is the ABQ Business Podcast with your host, Jason Rigby. Each week we'll interview visionary business leaders to inspire the creative power and spirit that's in every entrepreneur. Discussing strengths, weaknesses, strategies, systems, and the problems we can all solve together for a new future for local small business.
Hi, and welcome to the Albuquerque Business Podcast. This is Jason Rigby, your host. And today we have an interesting show, I think. Go ahead and introduce yourself if you wouldn't mind.
My name is Jim Charleston. I'm creator of the podcast Frijoles y Arroz.
And what does that mean in English?
Beans and rice.
So it's a podcast called Beans and Rice?
It's called Beans and Rice.
So if somebody wanted to look it up on like Apple or Google.
It's on all the podcasts.
Spotify,
platforms.
all of them.
It's on all of them.
So they would just type in beans and rice?
No, they have to. Frijoles y Arroz is what they have to type in.
So how would you spell that? So like if it's like for me, I'm from the South. I don't.
Okay. Frijoles Y.
Right.
ARROZ.
And I'm going to put that in the show notes so everybody can go directly on there. I think that'll be awesome. So can you tell us a little bit about the podcast? I know it's kind of your podcast, and you do like the marketing or whatever for it, or?
Yeah, so I'm Carey Rose O'Connell, and I'm the producer of marketing for Frijoles y Arroz podcast.
And she's awesome.
Thank you.
I know we were just talking earlier about like higher conscious and stuff like that, and you're writing a book, right?
I am, called The Practical Enlightenment.
So we already was like all getting along, having fun. So,
yeah.
So what do you assist with the podcast, or are you on the podcast, or?
No, I'm on the teaser episode, which is a great episode to listen to that kind of sets some of the understanding of the podcast and its unique storyline and styling. But my role was to really kind of help Jim bring the story into social media before we even had our first season release, so that we could start introducing the storyline and building kind of an early audience. So I tend to help a lot of brands do very early stage marketing and development.
Oh, that's
awesome. So that type of thing, press kits,
right.
The website now. So that type of thing.
Oh, that's awesome. And you guys have a website?
Yes.
We do.
Oh, okay, perfect. And is it the same like .com or?
Yeah, it's Frijoles y Arroz podcast.com.
Oh, okay, perfect. That's awesome. So everybody have to go on there. And like I said, I'll put the links on there. You on the website? Oh, that's awesome. So Jim, can you go a little bit into, because I thought it was really fascinating. So you're a writer. Did you come up with this storyline on your own, or what was the inspiration behind it?
So the inspiration behind this, it's been kind of a long time coming. Back in 1990, my wife died, leaving me to raise our two daughters on my own. So for the last 29, 30 years, I've been advocating for them. I've been listening to the problems they have, trying to help them and support them in navigating all the crazy things that are going on here in society.
So you had to be a mom and a dad.
Yeah, I was a mom and a dad. And I even had them take me out on Mother's Day for a while.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah,
I did. And anyway, in 2010, I saw this short video. It was about an invisible rapist, and you never saw the guy's face. You just saw what happened. And I realized that that's really kind of always the case. They're invisible until,
right,
something
exactly.
happens.
Right.
And then I saw a statistic that UN Women said 1 in 3 women was going to be either physically or sexually assaulted in their lifetime. And I thought, okay, my God, I'm like 55. I'm not going to be around forever. What am I going to do to help my daughters live in a world where it's safe? And that's when I first started exploring the topic.
And what is because there's fictional characters and all that, and I want you to get into that, but what's the main theme of the podcast?
The main theme of the podcast is to create a society where intimacy is safe for all. And the way that we do that is we bring up all these different ways of looking at intimacy and what is safety. And we have all these different perspectives, and we have the people interact trying to find a solution.
So in this fictional story, and we'll get into the narrative of that, but and where it's the setting and all that, but I want to, so you're creating a problem, and then at the end of the podcast, there's a solution.
Now, well, it's more about the journey right now than anything else.
I love that. Yeah.
Because we've got what we'd like the world to be.
Right.
We don't have an answer yet. Mm-hmm. Okay. So this is just about people trying to find that answer. And it's just about the journey. I don't have the answer.
Right. Right. And so you're not trying to impose a leftist or a right.
Not at all.
It's so if somebody listens to this and they think it's like a women's right or women's liberation, it's not. I don't want people to sit there and immediately tune it out. It's a storyline of a journey, and it's going to show both characters. Let's get into like the characters and the narrative and all that, because it's New Mexican, right?
It is New Mexico. It's set in the fictional town of Porquet, New Mexico, and it's about a sheriff's department there who tries to build community, tries to maintain community when the women's movement moves into town.
Oh, wow.
And we start out with,
Is it set in this modern time frame, or?
It is.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, cool.
It's a modern time frame, and Porquet is kind of a composite of a multitude of New Mexico towns, because I've been around quite a few of them, and they all have their little eccentricities. They have their characters, and I take bits and pieces of all of them and incorporate them into the story. Like, for example, the sheriff's department is an old gas station party doll store that is now a sheriff's department.
I love that.
Yeah, because they don't have, they don't have the money to build a new sheriff's department.
Right.
So they use an old party doll store. But somebody takes the party elsewhere.
Yeah, that's true.
They take the sign down and takes the party elsewhere. So,
yeah, there's a lot of truth into that. So, like in the characters, if you don't mind, Carolyn, right? Yeah, Carey. I'm sorry, I want to make sure. Yeah. Carey, like what, because you had said you like related to some of the characters.
Oh, absolutely. And that's why actually kind of staying with the small town theme, what I liked the most about the story that Jim developed in Porquet, New Mexico, is it represents everybody. Much like many communities in New Mexico, when I first lived away from New Mexico, I was shocked how segregated so many communities across the country are compared to growing up in Albuquerque.
Yes.
And so, I was very used to growing up around all different types of ideologies, religions, races, perspectives, all those types of things growing up in New Mexico, from our larger Albuquerque, as it were, to the smallest towns that we have. And so what I noticed about the story that I thought was one of the brilliant things behind it was that because it expresses every point of view, right-leaning points of view, left-leaning points of view, neutral points of view, it allows us to really inherently see biases that we all have just from growing up and not really addressing any of these things and having conversations about them. And so I was able to, see myself in a lot of different characters, like, oh my gosh, I've even said that, I think, or, I totally understand where that guy's coming from, where I never really thought about that, until I saw it in the context that Jim put this character together in the podcast. And so it really helps through this fictional town, us have a conversation about stuff that's really happening in every town across the country right now.
Yeah. And I think it's so important because when you begin to look at, especially like we're so polarized now, and so Jim, when you began to put these characters together, what was kind of like that thought process behind that?
Well, I wanted to present as many different sides of an issue as I could.
Right.
And
so you looked at an issue first and then you started looking at the characters?
Yeah. Well, yeah, because,
oh, that's brilliant. I like that.
What I wanted to do also was I wanted to not use your typical male or female characters. Like, for example, the deputy sheriff, Ardent Whithouse, she presents a typically male perspective.
Right.
She's all by the book, spit polished. She believes in the rule of law. And when these women are out on the overpass protesting, she's hauling them in. She wants to lock them up,
Right.
And, so that doesn't go over well with the other women.
Right.
Because they think she should be on their side.
So now there's a battle of ideologies there, even on the feminine side of things.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, because if you think about it historically, one of the things that's prevented the Equal Rights Amendment from fully ratifying is female intervention. Females were at the forefront of trying to stop that legislation, sadly. And so it allows us to really see, the reason that equality is so important is because our points of view are beyond gender. I mean, and that's what's great about what Jim does is he throws it, and all of a sudden there's these what we commonly know as male perspectives with female characters and vice versa. And so it kind of throws you for a loop, and you realize that's why equality is important, because we're actually no different, even across genders. We can all fall into different perspectives and biases.
Yeah. And so this is really interesting to me. I really like this. So whenever we look at these characters and you've kind of mixed them up, so can you go like, how many total characters do you have?
Oh my God. I think we had,
do you keep
22.
creating?
Yeah, we had 20.
We had 22.
Upwards of 20 local actors in the studio.
So that's awesome. So the main characters are, you have the sheriff.
Yep.
And she's kind of more, is she conservative?
She's very conservative. And then the male lead is a guy by the name of Adrian Olson, who's from Minnesota, but he's Hispanic, and he talks a little bit like a Minnesota guy.
Right.
And so the people in New Mexico, it's like his nickname was Oli in Minnesota, but they don't know Oli.
Right. That's a common.
Mexico,
yeah, right.
It's Ole. So it's Ole here. And it's like, okay, whatever. So he's really pretty moderate, and he's trying to be the peacekeeper in town.
Compromise.
And
is he more like a moderate?
Yeah. And to me, that's, when you look at the police force now, and it's all about stopping crime, and you got to have your gun, hand on your gun when you're pulling somebody over. The old time police that I remember is they knew everybody in town. They knew what their problems were.
Right.
If they got into trouble, they took them home and told their mom or something like that. So that's why I modeled him after. So hopefully we could get into the more of the peacekeeper instead of the police officer or the crime stopper.
Right. Like she is as a sheriff, because she's by the law. And if you're breaking a law, it's black and white.
Yep.
This is what it is.
Right. So they have that conflict going on.
Yeah.
He's the sheriff. She's the deputy. So she has to do what he says, but she's always pushing back.
So this feminist group that have come into the city, who's the lead in that?
They're actually
they're locals.
They're locals, yeah.
Okay, they're locals.
The most outspoken proponent of the women's movement is a woman by the name of Babe Woods, and she's 60 years old. She works at the thrift store, and she dresses in thrift store chic, but she does not hold anything back, and she is bumping heads with Ardent.
So she's like, so she would be like that real angry feminist.
Yes.
Yeah.
Played by Angela Wilson, who is completely fantastic.
She is amazing. Yeah.
And very explosive when you listen to her whenever she comes into any of the episodes. It's Babe is in the scene.
Is there a history behind that anger, or have you explored that yet? With her past?
Yeah, we haven't explored that yet. We hint at it a little bit in season 2, and we'll get into a little bit more in season 3. But yeah, we're just hinting at it right now. But yeah, to have an older woman who's a liberal up against a younger woman who's a conservative, and then just clashing heads. The Babe's thinking, Ardent, the hell's the matter with you? Right.
But I think it's a symbolization of today, because you see that, like I'll go on Twitter and I will look, and you'll see like some right-wing conservative female, and I'll watch, and then the male, like you said, are sitting in there, because I think male roles have changed in society too.
Sure.
So a lot of males, rightly or wrongly, whether you agree, with alpha, beta, all that stuff, but you kind of see it like, okay, these are two, it's a guy's looking at it like these two men are fighting, whatever. We got real stuff to do.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
When in actuality, they don't understand what's happening in that moment. Are these characters that you've created, do they play like, is there surprises in them? Like you would be surprised if, like this one may be ultra conservative, but then there's like this little hidden thing, or.
Yeah, we do have some of that.
So. Yeah.
We do have some of that. We've got
Are hints too? I know you
hints.
said there's hints. Yeah.
Yeah. I think what I kind of see, if I could say season 1, it's like everybody's resentment of change comes up, right? So everybody starts kind of resenting the other people in the room because they're just scared of why are things changing and are they changing, right? And so you get this kind of underlayer from Babe being resentful about oppression to Ardent being resentful and wanting women just to toughen up and pull themselves up by their own bootstraps, and
get
even
some balls.
Olay getting a little resentful.
She actually says, get some balls, woman.
Right. Olay even, in his compromising way, getting a little resentful that people can't just, calm down and find a way to talk, some of the more right leaning conservative points of view, Fred and Barney, on
Fred Bannon and Barney Trump.
Barney Trump. Very resentful that change even has to happen, right?
Right.
These things are fine the way they are. Women are taken care of enough. So what's all the hollering about? So it's like everybody starts kind of feeling this tension, like things have to change. Why? And they immediately go into these like kind of opposing corners, but because they're such a small community and they have to deal with each other.
Right. They're interacting daily.
It's not like I can go avoid it all because I'm going out in a population with hundreds of thousands of people, right? They're small. So they have to see each other. They have to deal with it. And so you start seeing little threads of similarities getting pulled out where Ardent's actually quite similar to Babe and Babe's actually quite similar to Fred. You see these crossovers.
Right. And I think that's the part where, and I think that's missed because I can remember, like my dad was conservative Baptist minister and then him having a good friend that was, Democrat and more liberal, and they were still able to talk to each other.
Sure.
And I don't know what's happening, in our country.
Yeah.
And this is why I think it's so intriguing what you guys are doing. This is amazing because we have, so in these common threads, do they kind of get together? Is there moments?
Well, we're just in season 1. I modeled this after
You're gonna have
Law
to
and Order
do like,
SVU. So, and they're at their 600 episodes. So yeah, I've got a lot of writing to do before we get in too deep here. All right.
Oh yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, because it's gonna have to. If you're at 20-something characters, that's crazy. That's a lot of writing.
Yeah,
it was a lot to record. It was very educational. Our first season 1 recording experience, and we would love to acknowledge Doug at Santa Fe Center Studios here in Albuquerque. He was our sound engineer and provided the studio space for us, and the way he could bring in all of our actors and cut all of our takes and manage that whole process.
Yeah, he is amazing.
That's really super extensive. That's a lot of time.
Yeah. And he even brought our Foley artist, Laura Dale, in, and he let her set up, her sandbox and her cement, path.
Yeah, describe that a little bit. What you guys actually have going on.
Yeah, so we went for old time radio, which used real Foley artists inspired by Jack Foley, who was the first guy to do footsteps and things like that in the first film.
Water and the
exactly. Yeah. Making the sound that, cloth makes when somebody touches you, because you're not really going to hear any of that. And so Laura Dale is a fantastic Foley artist here in New Mexico. And we had the honor that she jumped on board to work with us. And she did, she would just listen to the episode in the studio, and they would kind of plan out, her and Jim, ahead of time where sound effect needed to be. And she would come into the studio and just, she burnt a lot of calories. She was just up there running, walking, stomping, using a walker, and doing it all on gravel, grass, leaves, sand. Not to mention a lot of the other sound effects that she was responsible for, but footsteps.
She has about 300 pairs of shoes. And so for each one, we'd have to set up the platform first. If it was wood, so she'd have to go through Olay, she'd have to go through Babe, she'd have to go through Althea and Ardent on the wood. So she'd be changing these shoes, and then we'd go to grass, and then we'd go to sand, and she'd be changing shoes for each of those.
Yeah. That's crazy. So per character.
Yeah.
Wow.
She would just, and she's so talented, and she's done it for so long that, she kind of understands the personality of the character. And so she can just right away say, like, these are Olay's shoes, these are Angela's shoes. She just knows.
And she walks different. Is he angry or is he pensive or is he, so she has to communicate the emotion in the steps.
Are you, as a writer, when you see something visualized like that, you just putting it on paper and you're thinking in your head, but when you actually see something like that,
well, the first
is there continuity there? Do you feel that?
The first episode was an education for me. It was an education for me. Every subsequent episode, I wrote in those Foley kind of
moments.
Yeah, I wrote them in so that we would know that that's what we would need to do.
Oh, so you kind of knew ahead of time, because I've heard writers when I've talked and they've watched something be produced, whether it's on film or whatever, then they're like, I saw this, now I don't want to go back to writing because I saw it, it was different than, the beautiful part about you guys being independent like you are, you can take full creativity of what you write. There's not NBC or CBS or somebody telling you, no, we need to have it for this, for the audience.
Yep. Yeah, no, we don't. We just, we're telling the story.
Right.
That's what we're doing.
Yeah.
And Catherine E. Jones was our director, and she was just marvelous. The things that she pulled out of those characters. I mean, and that's one of the things that I love about writing is that I write and I have in my head how I think things should be. Then you bring in the director and the actors, and it's like, whoa, that was really cool what you did. I didn't even think that was going to be there. But yeah.
It almost brings like a 3-dimension to it.
It does.
Absolutely.
It really does.
Absolutely.
So, because you got first season done, right? And everybody can download. And I encourage everybody to do that. I'm going to do that tonight. What happens in each episode? Are you like picking an issue? Or is it just a story that's just moving along? Or are you actually saying, we're going to hit, abortion in this issue, or we're going to hit the silent rapist in this issue, or how does that work?
Well, we start out with the overall objective to make town safe for the women. The women want to be able to walk to the grocery store, step out of the house, go to the parking lot, go to the library without always thinking about, okay, is there a perp lurking here or there? So how do we do that as a town? So they bring it up and they try to get the councilman and that into it. So it starts out with that is the beginning, and it's only a half hour comedy podcast.
Right.
So you can't get into too much in that first 30 minutes. You just kind of set up the whole thing. So the first season is just about more or less Olay saying, okay, let's have a town meeting, see what we need to do in order to create a more safe environment. Well, there's a couple of wrenches that get thrown in there, like Babe and Arden, they can't work together. So he sends them off to deal with their issue, and that's an episode.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
I see what
And
you're
then
saying.
we have the
Right.
town hall meeting, and then the town hall meeting, blows up. So we have another protest.
Right. I see what you're saying. Yeah. And then from there, not wanting to deal with those people because like his life is that way.
Yep.
So he would just send things off instead of having to deal with them. So you can kind of see these, correlations that are happening.
Yeah.
These are like real life situations that these fictional characters are dealing with.
Yeah.
Well, let's get into that because I know, with your daughters and everything, a lot of people don't understand that, especially as a male. You don't understand that. And maybe you can speak to this, is the whole idea of a woman being afraid literally all the time.
Right.
Like we never think about that. As a guy, I'm 6 foot something. I will go out to my car at 2:00 in the morning. I don't think anything.
Absolutely.
There's no fear.
Right.
Where a woman is always looking, always fearful. So was that was the start of the first episode?
That was the second episode.
Second episode.
Olay sent Arden out to interview the town and ask them what they thought of safety. And all the women's answers were entirely different than the men's answers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And a lot of it too, it really goes back to different layers of privilege. That's really what it is
right.
beyond gender. As somebody who walks, my ethnicity is not what it appears to be in a lot of ways. I'm half Mexican, but I got the very Caucasian appearance, right? So I understand what it is to walk around with white privilege in the sense that I'm not scared if I have to interact with a police officer. Right? Because I've never had an experience that I felt like they were prejudging me.
Right. Or you've never had a relative really close to you that had been abused.
Exactly. And that's and that's what I hope that we start diagnosing through this podcast is we understand that privilege, I'm not saying that to judge anybody. We all walk around with different layers of privilege.
Right. Men
are privileged because they're often not considered prey like women are. Right. And so you don't really walk around with this sense that somebody's looking at you weird. Whereas women, even if we're walking around confident, doing our thing, not victimizing ourselves, we also understand that any room we're standing in, there's likely somebody looking at us in a way that we wouldn't feel comfortable with that thought process.
Well, it's because that's always interesting to me because that prey mentality. Would we ever elect extremely, I'm going to be point blank, extremely ugly woman president? Would we ever have a pop artist that's not attractive? just on the female side.
Exactly.
We'll have guys that play guitar and they look,
right.
You can see some of the 70s rock guys weren't the most attractive guys. Wasn't to the 80s they started getting hair bands and starting to look a little bit more. And then 90s we had pop, coming on the scene. But when you look on the female side of things,
we've always had to look.
Yes, apart. The physical exterior part had to be.
And the women that tried to defy that, like Janis Joplin is one that comes to my mind. It terrorized her, trying to figure out how to stand opposite of that mold and that label and that little.
There's probably a gender, all of that
absolutely
was paying.
Yeah, and so that's to me, that's what it really helps identify is, it's just that experience where you all of a sudden you go, I didn't know that's what it was like to walk around like you. Yeah, that's what it's like to walk around like me, And when we finally have that moment where we realize, I did not realize that person couldn't share this common experience with me in the same way I do every day, that they have a very uniquely different history that doesn't allow them to see something that I see as a very common, simple moment, right? For them, it could be a very tense moment, right? And that's where we start dissecting privilege and bias and those things. And that's what I love about Frijoles y Arroz is it does that in this way that's just, it allows you to go like, wow, there it is. It's just right there. It's got that comedy to it that allows you to see it and laugh at it and go, oh my gosh, I feel so silly that that's actually how we're behaving right now.
And so the women came up with a whole different, when they surveyed. Yeah. Of course, like it would be.
Yeah.
And the guys are thinking everything's great.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, so season 2, you're going to be having, or have you filmed season 2 yet? Or
no, we haven't recorded it yet.
Yeah, we'll record in the late winter, early spring.
We still have some fundraising to do.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So is that on your website? Or?
Yeah. So a couple plugs real quick.
Yeah, let's do that. A couple
ways to stay involved is you can donate to season 2 on our website. That's a real easy way to stay a part of the show. Also, we're doing to give back to the community. Part of our social media and our marketing, even before we were releasing and we were still recording, was let's make it an and not only while we're promoting our particular podcast, let's promote other cause-based organizations and movements that are going on in the world to help bring awareness to the things that we're trying to help resolve in communities. So we do things like, obviously, Women's History Month. We did a ton of media throughout that month, things like that. But what we want to launch is the Women's Owned Network. And that's one reason why we really were happy to connect with you and your listeners is we don't really want anything from them other than them to say like, hey, I'm a women-owned business here in New Mexico and I'd love to be in your directory so people can see that I have my listing on your website and can see, maybe my retail shop here locally or click to my website and buy something. And then those women are actually going to get first offers to be either episode sponsors or do product placement.
I love that.
They could be highlighted in an episode.
So why is it in New Mexico? Because I was in a meeting with the governor and we were looking at, there was literally a room full of 300 white men that controlled New Mexico.
Yeah.
I mean, this was a meeting of influential, and the whole, it was all older white guys and literally people were saying, these are the people that control New Mexico. So why is it so hard for a woman to have a business in New Mexico? I mean, it just seems like because I talk to business owners all the time. And I look, and I was talking to extremely successful Annette DiLorenzo. She has DiLorenzo dealerships.
Yeah.
And she's on the NADA board, the National Association of Dealers, and she's going to be, and I was talking to her that day and I asked her that same question. We were talking about it and just the amount of, I want to make sure I use the right word, of like scoffing, like in the sense of like, like it's that old mentality are the 70, 80-year-old guys going to have to die? For New Mexico to flourish? What is that problem?
Yeah. Well, some of it too, I work with a couple of different women's organizations, and what I encourage them to do is stop waiting for permission. I think sometimes
that's so good. I like that.
We actually prevent ourselves from taking those chances, hoping to get either this perfect setup or permission from somebody to move forward that we feel like has authority, when really, when I decided to become a full-time freelancer, it was a real radical choice for a lot of people in my friends and family circle. They were like, so you're just going to like wing it? And I'm like, yeah, we're just going to make it happen, But what I realized was by you being resourceful and knowing that I was doing the right thing for my passion and that I would find what I needed to make it all work by trusting what I was going to be putting into the world, it all kept coming forward drip by drip. I would always get exactly what I needed to move through. And so I think sometimes as women, we need to give ourselves permission to first be radical and not wait for anybody to tell us we're ready to sit at the table. If I can't sit at your table, I'm going to go sit at my own table and do my own thing.
Well, and that's the other thing that I wanted to do with the project is not just tell the story. I wanted to have it apply on the ground. And that's why we set up the Women Owned Network. We want to promote them. We also want to help them grow economically. Mm-hmm. So in our crowdfunding, instead of having, kitschy things like t-shirts and coffee cups and things like that, we'd like to partner with the organization, say, okay, give us a discount. You go out and you buy this coupon, then you go to their website and you buy something.
Right. That's awesome.
When I was looking for women-owned businesses here in Albuquerque, I did a Google search and I found an article that was done by the Albuquerque Journal that said the top 50 women-owned businesses in Albuquerque. It showed you 3, and then you had to buy the journal to see the rest of them, which I never did.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
But there's nothing that's out there online. So why don't we do it?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you type in women-owned businesses, yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think that's awesome. Yeah. Because I don't because I'm out talking to business leaders all the time, and I would say, because I'm from Seattle originally, moved down here like 4.5 years ago. So different level, whole different diet, you have Amazon and Starbucks and all these Microsoft and all those, and the tech companies are facing these issues with women too, and understanding. Sure. I was reading an article today on Medium and they were talking about that, how anti-women tech companies have become, and then when you go to, I was at Snapchat last week in a digital marketing meeting, and I would say 70%, was, if you want to use the word, like you said, white privilege, maybe.
Right.
Yeah.
And so is the podcast going to address this? Would there be a character opening up a business or?
There's absolutely.
I mean, I don't want you to give away your thing.
No. Well, our local gun shop owner is a young African-American male.
Oh, perfect.
And one of the things that he does for the town is that he has insomnia. So he patrols at night to make sure everything's safe with his handgun.
That's cool. Yeah.
Which, when you think about it from a white perspective, what's going to scare the shit out of you more than that?
Yeah, exactly. Right? Yeah, exactly.
So
if you're a visitor out of town and there's an African-American guy running around at 2:00 in the morning with the gun,
checking doors, looking in windows, things like that.
The rest of the town already knows what's going down.
Right.
Yeah. So, and he's about the sweetest guy there is.
Yeah.
So we've got stuff like that. And it's intention more than anything else. When we go out, when we pull out our wallets, when we pull out our credit cards, who we buying from?
I love that.
Who we buying from? So,
that's so true. Yeah. Because I don't think a lot of times we look at it that way.
No.
When we go on, we just had Black Friday and Cyber Monday and all that. And we're just looking at the best deal. Yeah. And we don't realize exactly what we just purchased.
Where's the money going?
We're chronically complaining as a society right now about how broke the large majority of us are, but we are spending $147 billion this holiday season on TVs, iPhones,
Yeah, it's kind of
exactly. Like, well, are we broke or are we that liquid? Because I thought we were all broke.
Right.
Yeah.
So
I think it's kind of starting to really recognize where is our pain, and how are we addressing it?
But I think it's something that, I talked to my tattoo artist the other day and he's like, don't book me from January to May because it's all tax return money.
Right.
And it's like, wow, all these people getting tax return money, and then they're just taking that money and turning around and, if you have disposable income, that's fine.
Right.
But, a lot of them are living at a poverty level, and it's like buying, I think Samsung TVs was number 1 and then iPhones. Yeah. I was just reading an article this morning on it, but
Alexas.
Alexas and the Google Homes and all that.
Yeah. To plug another business, the American Institute of or Independent Business Association has a website where it shows you the benefits of buying local. 2/3 of the money that you spend in a big box store goes outside of the community. if you buy somebody local, it brings back 3 times that into the community through the accountants, through the craftsmen and people like that.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people don't realize, this is really interesting. I'm having a guy on the podcast. He was about ready to go out of business here locally, and he invented this app that shows the value. I heard
that.
Yeah. I don't know.
Listen to that podcast.
Yeah. You listen to it, but it was really interesting because by the time you add all the extras that this local business gives you personalized, and the hours that they spend with you with that product, compared to just getting a box in the mail.
Yeah.
It's a big difference, but they were even talking about how much the postage is and what that is with the trucks, the boxes, the amount of cardboard we're going through now.
Yeah.
I mean, the list goes on, and
and the environmental impacts.
Yeah, exactly.
Carbon footprint.
Yeah. It creates a lot of waste.
Yep.
Yeah. Where you could just go down to your local store, have a good conversation, buy something that you got to spend some time, with and talking about and learning about, hopefully, there's a value to local shopping that we hope to promote through our Women's Own Network. So women that want to be a part of it, it's already on our website. If you go to Frijoles y Arroz podcast.com, it's at the very top of our menu. You just say, click on Women's Own Network. You can click a button and sign up. And then
so is that free to sign up?
Yeah. Free to sign up, free to list yourself. And then I'll be directly in touch with you with just in a few days of you signing up to make sure I get it all laid out for you correctly and we get your brand out there. And then, like I said, they'll get first offers to be a part of our future episodes by being episode sponsors.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, of course. Yeah, you have all that.
Yeah, and giving them really affordable ways to advertise themselves through our podcast.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I'm totally open to writing their business into the storyline.
Yeah, especially if it's something that is promoting community.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
Now, is it Albuquerque or is it New Mexico, or have you guys decided that?
The Women Own Network?
The whole state.
It's the whole state.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, the whole state.
Oh, okay, cool. So if somebody if they're in Ruidoso, they can.
Yeah, absolutely.
Of course,
and and now, like our season 1, we had listeners in 47 countries and 200.
I know. I heard you guys talking about
cities,
Portuguese and
India.
So
I mean, hey, Istanbul, send me a shout out. I'll put you on the directory.
Absolutely.
That's okay.
Right.
Yeah, we'll go global.
Yeah, we will.
That's okay.
Yeah, that's what the next podcast I'm fixing to do. Alex will be in here, and that's something that he's wanting to do with this tech company is provide interest-free loans.
Oh, wow.
Into some of these micro economies that, were women, for women so that they can get, because there's a lot of textile and stuff like that that's going on.
Cool.
But
and they only need a small amount to get started.
Exactly.
Yeah, the barrier is real small for a lot of women.
So let's get you guys. One thing that I want to make sure everybody does is subscribe to the podcast.
Yes.
So we're going to put that in the show notes. We'll have that in there. I want to make sure you guys do that. I think this is brilliant. I think you guys are hit on something. This is going to go like more than New Mexico.
So much fun.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's so much fun.
Yeah. I mean, this is like interesting to the point of, because we were talking about earlier, with cartoons and South Park and stuff like that, you're kind of like have this ability to be able to bring something up with these fictional characters that is not, I don't think, but it's worldwide. It's not just New Mexico.
No. Yeah.
That's what's cool about it. Yeah.
Well, and one of the things that we did, Michelle Tomlinson was our casting director. And one of the things, she's also the, my script supervisor.
Right.
And I would work through the scripts with her to make sure that I didn't miss anything and there was continuity. And she suggested that, at first I was thinking, should I write this more narrative? Because I wrote it as a teleplay. And she goes, no, keep it as a teleplay. So we have a narrator that sets up each scene and goes into act 1, 2, 3, teaser and tag. Cool. So that, if anybody's out there that wants to turn it into a TV series, it's already formatted.
It's all ready to go. Yeah.
It's already formatted.
Have you guys ever thought of like filming it live or?
Oh, recording live? Wow. Recording the podcast.
What was that? It was like on PBS or something. There was like Graham Keller or something. Prairie
Home Companion.
He would record all that stuff live. Remember, they were just sitting on mics and stuff like that.
Maybe one episode. Kind of a rogue episode.
Just thinking of the logistics of getting 22 people into the room and doing it all live.
Oh, all at once with all those mics.
Yeah.
If anybody could do it, Doug could do it. I imagine.
Yeah, I know, but
that would be something there. Yeah. But no, I think it's really awesome. I really appreciate you guys. It's so creative.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. And it's to me, it just feels good. Like it's something that, and the ability to be able to do what you've done, Jim, in writing this and then putting it out there, it's going to be successful.
Yeah.
I know it already is, but it's going to touch people's lives. And I think that's what's important.
Thank you.
I mean, like I said earlier, I just wanted to do the discussion, open up the discussion. And we already had that in the green room. We had a couple of the older actors asking the younger ones, well, okay, so what does it mean to be gender fluid?
Yeah.
And what's a demigod?
Exactly.
You know, what are those things? I don't understand that.
Right.
And they had a conversation. So it's already working.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. And that's all we want is to have, and you were talking about that earlier and we'll get ready to close here pretty soon. But like you were sharing earlier, kind of how everybody needs to have these conversations with our conscience. And I want to get like too spiritual, but at the end, I think it's something like you were saying, just being human.
Yeah, absolutely. We're here to practice being human. And what this is meant to do is to teach us that it's okay to be human. It's okay to have flaws. It's okay to not understand. And it's okay to be curious. As long as the goal is actually that we be responsible for that in our own selves.
And we find a way to work together.
And we find a way to understand, okay, well, why am I reacting to this lady needing to say that it feels unsafe, right?
Right.
So why am I reacting to that? Why does that create a reaction in me? I can't just receive what she's saying. I have a reaction to it. So what is that in me? And then how do I come back and sit actually with her and find out where is that coming from her?
And
how do we find a place to fix it? Yeah. And that's really what he's showing can happen through all these very quirky kind of difficult characters that, are really kind of the extremes of us all.
No, I love that. That's awesome.
And so it is. It's very much a podcast. It's for every human because it's just about being human.
No,
and that's okay
awesome,
that we all disclose finally to each other, air our dirty laundry and say, look, I always tell people when we say right now about our country being very divided, well, this isn't us. It's actually exactly who we are. And as soon as we embrace that, the sooner we can let it go and start talking,
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah. Well, I would love to be able, if I could, Jim, on the show notes, be able to get like 2 paragraphs from you or something that I could put it in there with your writing, if that would be awesome. Because I don't want to like give a description of the show. I think you're so talented. It would be something that you should put in your own words.
Just a description of the show?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I would love that. Because I don't want to be sitting there in my, that's one thing I am not good at. I will write like a show, podcast, So I don't want to be offensive in any way. And I know you're so brilliant in what you do. I can tell in everything that you do. Yeah, that I think that would be awesome. But thank you guys for being on. I really appreciate
Jason.
it.
For having us.
I am encouraging everybody to subscribe. I'm going to do that tonight. I'm going to listen to the whole season.
Cool.
How many episodes is there? There are 30 minutes.
There's
30
5
minutes.
There's 5
bingeable in like an hour and a half.
Yep. Oh, that's awesome.
Season 1 you can binge out on.
Yep.
And then get ready for season 2 coming in at the beginning of 2020.
That's great. That's awesome. Well, thank you guys. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on the Albuquerque Business Podcast. And thanks to our sponsor, RigbyDigital.com. Make sure to subscribe and share. And go to abqpodcast.com. Get show notes, resources, and links to everything we talked about today to help you navigate your journey as an entrepreneur and business owner.